Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. So, you never know what's going to pop out of my thing here, right? Whoa. Hey. Bada bing, bada boom, huh? Yes. Very good. Catherine, I'm ready to shake her hand, say Shabbat Shalom. Bam. Here's right? All right. So that means that we have corn, right? And so I guess it'll be out there. Please feel free to take it. And Catherine, I'm just going to say, whatever is not taken, take. All right? Because probably it's not a good idea for us to have corn laying around for weeks. You know what I mean? Okay? So feel free. There you go. And that's so very appropriate for Sukkot, right? And so we appreciate that very much. You know, during Sukkot, we are receiving a special offering for the Sam Bish Foundation. Last night, Brittany Schatz gave a great little testimony about this organization. They support families who are undergoing childhood cancer. And as Brittany shared last night, boy, you have a million things coming at you, and here you have Cindy and her husband just helping out in very practical ways, whether it be having to do with everything from car repairs to things at home or words of encouragement or just all kinds of things. And of course, they came on our radar because we know them. Cindy and her mom, in particular, Gail, who is an old friend and Jewish believers, in Messiah. And this is a good thing for us to be supportive of, and certainly on Sukkot. So I believe we have our I don't know what's back there. If our offering, I can't see. Is it back there? Okay, I can't help it. Okay. What can I tell you? All right. So there's a separate box back there for those gifts. So unless you're giving cash and you need a receipt, okay, the envelopes aren't going to matter. All right. So if you're writing a check, you make it out to Beth Messiah and just put Bish, B-I-S-H, in the memo. If it's cash and you need a receipt, put the cash in there, and you'll let us know how much it is, what you put in, if you need that. Okay. And we'd really like to bless them, in a really nice way. They're really wonderful people, and they do a good work. Okay, so and let's be remembering our regular giving as well. Okay, always want to do that. So next week, Hebrew school starts on the 8th, on Sunday morning the 8th at 9:30. We're ready for a new year of Hebrew school. Hebrew school teachers, that means Sunday mornings. Here we are. All right? So that is exciting. And next week will be a double blessing because after our first hour of Hebrew school, we will be having our Simchat Torah service. And that is when we rewind our Torah scrolls back to Bereshit, back to Genesis. We read the end of Deuteronomy, the beginning of Genesis, and we sing a lot and walk around the sanctuary with our Torah scrolls, and it's just a real joyful time. And so that will be at 10:45 next Sunday morning. So our Hebrew school will be from 9:30 to 10:30, and then 10:45 will be Simchat Torah. Okay? And so let's be remembering that. And then the next day, the 9th, MSI begins. Henry Goulet will be teaching a class called What is the Bible? What does it do? Really, I'm sure he'll really be helping us to understand how to get the most out of the Word of God. And then Hebrew and Greek start later that week on the 12th. If you have any questions, you can ask Marcy, you can contact Henry, or go to mjsi.org. And we have sent all this information out in emails. As well as Reading Together for Growth in a couple of weeks. That will be beginning again on Sunday evening. And again, please check out your email with all of our announcements for that. Same thing with our Sisterhood Retreat. That is coming up in a few weeks. And so you want to see Lola Klein for that. That will be on Saturday, the 21st of October. And right outside here, there's a sign-up sheet, men, so that during the women's retreat, we can all be praying. That's a great idea, isn't it? So you can pick a time slot to pray. If you are attending, no prayer if you're attending the retreat. No, wait a minute, that's not what that means. If you're attending the retreat, go to our website, check out the our announcements. It's easy to sign up. It is all day on Shabbat, October 21st. Okay, so you want to get your your registration, and there's a brochure in the foyer that will tell you all about it. Okay. And then coming up at the end of October, and you'll be hearing more about this, we'll be having information/membership classes. That means whatever you ever want to know about Beth Messiah Congregation, everything from our history, our polity, how we make decisions, to our statement of faith, and just all of it. And then also what it means to be part of a Messianic Jewish congregation. That's where you'll get all that information. And here is something that might entice you to come. A few years ago, we made a video. It's about 25 minutes long, so that will have to be incorporated into our time of meeting. But it has interviews and sort of goes back to the beginning of Beth Messiah, to the present day. Now it's a little dated already, probably, because it's about 5 years old. But you do get the point, a kind of understanding where we come from and how we got to where we are. Some interesting music involved there as well. Tons of pictures. And so I think this year, now starting with these set of classes, we'll show that video. So my guess is some of you might like to see it anyway, right? Some of you are in it, right? And it's really very exciting. You'll see if you watch it. Aaron Leese, he had a drone and put a camera up there. We were all waving from the ground. That was really fun. A lot of good things took place there. All right, so that is what is happening. And let me just say this. Krista, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do we have any spaces left for Israel? Okay. So, Israel, next May 20th to June 2nd. Come with us. You'll not only see the land and all that, but you're going to have a good time. All right? It really, when we go to Israel, we see all the important, historical places regarding, Jerusalem and elsewhere, in the land. But we also try to appreciate the land and Israel, the nation itself. And we have a couple of more places left. So if you're interested in that, you want to see, I'll just say you can see myself or Krista Ball. It's also in our announcements still. All right? Very good. And since it is Sukkot, I want to mention something. I want to acknowledge someone in our midst. Sukkot is about, in its most basic meaning, about appreciating really the agriculture, the harvest time. We build a sukkah outside, and it's kind of, we're outside, and so it reminds us of nature and things that grow and the provision of God and blessing. So when you park your car out in the parking lot, wait, how does that go? Oh, never mind. I just had a piece of a song in my head, and I was going to say it. But they built a parking lot. Anyway, never mind. All right, so when you park your car, you walk in, right? You walk in. But in between the parking lot and the building, you avail yourself of the beauty of nature. And so the person who is sort of our point person on that is Heidi Moore. And Heidi, stand up for just a second, because probably many people may not know who you are, right? And so there is Heidi, okay? And if you would like to participate, I know that many people like to dig outside and, plant flowers and things like that. And you may wonder, hey, how do I get in on that? Well, you want to see Heidi, okay? And you can participate. So Heidi, thank you for all of your hard work on all of that. And Sukkot is a good time to remember, all those good things. Okay, we're talking about the flowers and corn and all those good things. But we're going to talk about a few other good things here for a few moments. About Sukkot, about this great holiday. Well, last night we had a great time. Not only the time of the service outside, but also afterwards. It was so idyllic, we had music playing, we had lights on in the sukkah, people were hanging out, eating, and it was just really very, 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 very nice, and kind of what Sukkot's supposed to be about, And again, after the service today, we'll have our oneg luncheon in the sukkah, and so that is really special. But what we were saying last night is, and this is really, today is kind of part 2 of it, is that in what Marcy read in the Torah, it says there that we're supposed to build a sukkah so that we remember that God had us dwell in Sukkot, in the sukkah, in the wilderness, right? And over time, especially during the time period, it's called the Second Temple period. For those of you that might not be familiar with that, that's the time from after the Babylonian captivity to right after the time of Yeshua. Does that make sense? So that means it's like in the Bible, it would be when there's Ezra, Nehemiah, Zechariah, Haggai, Malachi, and then the entire New Covenant, basically, especially the Gospels, when Yeshua lived. During that period of time, there was a tremendous amount of thinking that went on in the Jewish world. And, some of it is really very powerful, and that really lends itself to understanding the Messiah. And you could relegate other parts of it to just interesting. But it was a time of great creativity in the Jewish thinking world among leaders, spiritual leaders, and writers, and others. And some of it is even reflected in the scriptures, in the post-Babylonian captivity prophets like Zechariah. It's very interesting that in the prophet Zechariah, which is our Haftorah portion for today, that it talks about Sukkot and how the day is going to come when God himself is going to sit on his throne and nations are going to come and celebrate Sukkot. And then it says in the text that if they don't, they will not have rain. They will not have rain, right? And what do we know about Sukkot? We know that there are great prayers for rain on Sukkot, right? And we're going to learn in a few minutes about what that even represented in a spiritual way. Well, anyway, some of the thinking that began to unfold was that Sukkot, and this really took place really during the time of even the earlier prophets, that Sukkot had something to do with the future. Not only the past, but it had something to do with the coming of the Messiah, the Messianic age, the world to come. And that the whole wilderness journey of our ancestors was a model of life itself, a model of the journey of life. And that somehow Sukkot plays some kind of role. So we learned last night that in a passage like Isaiah chapter 4, that the word sukkah is used to describe the shelter, the shelter that will be in the future, and it came to be understood as not just a shelter, but the very presence of God. And so there was a stream of teaching among very famous rabbis in this Second Temple period from that the sukkahs that the people dwelt in, yes, they might have been lean-tos or whatever they were, but that in the text, in Leviticus, when it says God had them dwell in Sukkot, that it actually was speaking about the cloud of glory, the presence of God that protected the people and that led the people, and so on. And so this was very interesting, and we learned last night about a passage in Matthew 17 where you have the mention of Sukkot. We talked all about that. But the most important thing from last night, really, for us, is that indeed the purpose of the Sukkah is to remind us that life is transitory, to remind us that everything here, nothing lasts. And what lasts is from God. And so therefore, as we dwell in the Sukkah, we give thanks to God for his sheltering presence. And so we said that, well, if this depicts life as the journey, we know that life can be transient. Life, there are no guarantees. We're on a wilderness journey. This journey can be uncomfortable at times, but we press on. We press on because we know we have a destiny, just like the children of Israel in the wilderness. There's a destiny. So we press on. We keep moving forward. And of course, in Messiah, we recognize that he has given us, this deliverance, as it were, out of Egypt. And so he is indeed dwelling with us, to get us there. And so we invoked the great Hebrew word kadima, right? Kadima, let's go, keep moving forward. Which is really a pretty good equivalent for press on. Whether we're talking about the Hebrew word radaf, which is in Hosea, press on, or the Greek word as well, basically means the same thing. Be in hot pursuit. That's really what press on means. Like, take the initiative. Keep moving. And that is what we do in this life, being motivated by the presence of God in us, the forgiveness of sins in Messiah Yeshua, and the empowerment that he gives us, knowing that there is indeed a destiny, that this is not all that there is, no matter what condition we may be in. And we said last night that for some of us, we may be in a literal wilderness journey. In other words, maybe, we've been hit with something that we don't know where to go. We don't know what to do. Maybe we're in between like career kinds of things, or maybe, having to do with, we thought life was going to go just smooth like this, but now it's not. And now I'm not sure where I'm going to be living. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing. And so it can be a real wilderness, but we always want to remember keep our eyes focused, keep focused on Messiah, and keep moving forward. And that in him, he keeps us above the fray, right? And we will get to the destiny. So kadima. Now I thought late last night, Sylvia Smith posted on Facebook some pictures from last night, and a little bit about what we said. And I thought it was really interesting because I was going to say this, but I don't think I did. But you made this connection to an Arabic word, yalla, right? Which, by the way, in Israel is like colloquial. That whether language can be it can be a divider, but it can also be a unifier. Yalla is an Arabic word, but it's used in Israel all over the place, kind of like kadima, yalla. Like come on, let's go. Yes, like slang. It's kind of like slang, and so we keep moving. But this morning, we want to continue understanding this idea of moving forward and how we do this. And this will bring us, eventually, to the great passage in the Gospel of John, Yochanan, where Yeshua says something about Sukkot that is really dynamic. And I'll just say right off the top, that should not surprise us, because Yeshua, he is the Messiah of Israel, and lived in Israel, and lived among Jewish people, and was part of the Jewish milieu. He was a Jewish leader, a proto-rabbi. The reason we say proto-rabbi, they're called rabbis, but they weren't like rabbis in the 3rd or 4th century yet. But yes, Yeshua is an early rabbi. And rabbis would gather disciples, and they would teach. And they might have a particular thing that they emphasized. And so Yeshua fit right into the world in which he lived. It wasn't like Yeshua was born Jewish but raised in a Christian home in Nebraska. Okay? You've seen his high school graduation picture, right? The one where he's kind of looking up with a little flip of hair, right? Right. So that comes out of nowhere, who knows what. But anyway, sometimes that is the picture that we have. But that's not who he was. He was from the Middle East. He was Israeli, okay? He thought like a Jewish person living in Eretz Yisrael at the time. And reflected some of the traditions and teachings of that time. They were not all anti-biblical, and so that's really very, very important. Even some of those traditions, by the providence of God, played right into what Yeshua came to do and spoke about. So, in today's Haftorah portion, and in this very famous passage that we'll look at in a minute, there's a phrase. And in Hebrew it rhymes, so it's kind of cool, right? Right. And so that phrase is Mayim Chayim. There's even songs about it and so on. Mayim Chayim. Anybody ever learn a song like in Jewish camp or something like that? Mayim Chayim, yeah. And so Mayim Chayim means living water, okay? And if you just look in your English Bible, you're only going to see it in a few different places. But it's actually in more places because it's not always translated as living water. Sometimes it's translated as fresh water, running water, and something, usually fresh water or running water. For example, it's used about the water that came out of Isaac's wells. That when Isaac was digging wells, remember? And that's unless you were there, maybe, I don't know. But in Genesis chapter 26, it uses the phrase spring water, fresh water, flowing water, depending on what English translation Bible you have, right? But it's Mayim Chaim is what it says. Use that word Chaim, means living in Hebrew, okay? In Vayikra, in Leviticus, in the 14th chapter, very interestingly, in relationship to the cleansing of people with skin diseases and the cleansing of mold from the house. You didn't use the water to get clean, but it was a part of the ritual offering, like a libation. And it had to do with birds being offered and things like that. But the point of it is that the same mayim chaim is used. Fresh water, running water. Really, in a sense, what it is clean water is really what it is. It's also used in Numbers chapter 19. You know that chapter. That's about the red heifer, right? And so you know how there was like a concoction from the ashes of the red heifer that would be mixed with water? It was mayim chaim. And so in all these passages, the water is either used ritually in a holy kind of way, or it refers to literally clean running water. Okay? Now this is important in Israel because it's a very arid environment, right? Very arid environment. So clean, fresh water is a real commodity. And, you know, in places in the desert, if you don't have water, you die, right? And so it was really mayim chaim, living water. It was absolutely necessary. And just for the sake of getting it all down correctly, it's used in one other place outside of speaking about God. It's used in the Song of Songs, Song of Solomon, in describing the woman, that she reminds him of mayim chaim, living water. So there you go. Now, in Jeremiah, though, in the prophet Jeremiah, he uses it in a way that is more familiar to us when we think about living water. And that's why it's actually translated as living water in a couple of places. In the 2nd chapter of Jeremiah, we read this: "For my people have committed 2 evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, to hew for themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water." Okay? So carefully, living water represents what God gives. One might say, I like to think of it as the definition of what blessing is: an infusion of life, a fountain of living water, what God provides, that they've gone off on their own, looking to fill themselves up with what they think might satisfy them. And by doing so, they have forsaken God, the one who provides real satisfaction, right? And so that's important for us to think about in all of this. That, that's a real challenge for us, right? What do we find satisfying? What is it that really floats our boat? What is it that we become preoccupied with? What might it be? What is our living water? Sometimes it might be looking for a spouse. Maybe it might be looking for a great, retirement or something. Maybe it might be an institution, or it might be even an idea, of some sort. Rather than finding real satisfaction from a God himself. You know, you've heard me say this before. Whenever I talk about this, I always give the illustration of an old advertisement on television, right? The good thing is we have so many lovely new people. You've never heard me say this before, so stay awake. Okay, good. And that is that, so there used to be this advertisement where you'd have this cowboy in the Old West be wearing all that stuff, all that heavy stuff. Right? He's walking like in the desert, right? And he has like this vision of a saloon out in the distance, like, something to drink, right? And they show his face, like, it's parched, he's sweating, it's hot, he's walking slow, and so then he comes up to the saloon, and he opens up those doors. Right? And then he cozies up to the bar, right? And now he's going to get his thirst quenched. And what does he say? Give me a bag of chips. Right? It's a potato chip advertisement, right? Give me a bag of chips. And then he opens up the bag and he eats it like this, right? And so, of course, these potato chips satisfy even someone who's thirsty, right? Of course, why do I remember it? And why do you maybe remember it? Because it's so ridiculous, right? It's so ridiculous that if you're dying of thirst, you're not going to eat potato chips. But what a great metaphor for life, right? We are thirsty and we're eating and drinking things that don't satisfy. And we just keep doing more of it and keep looking for more of it. When we just, when we're missing out on the real deal. See? And that is what Jeremiah is saying. They have forsaken me. He said the two things they've done, they've forsaken me and gone after other things. Okay? Then in the 17th chapter of Jeremiah, we read this. O Lord, the hope of Israel, all who forsake you will be put to shame. Those who turn away on earth will be written down. Why? Because they have forsaken the fountain of living water, even the Lord, the fountain of living water. So clearly, it represents God and all that God says he will be and all that God says he will do in us and for us. And then, of course, it's interesting that in Zechariah, let's go back there again to the Haftorah portion. Okay, and we're going to turn to there and also one other place. Okay, so in Zechariah, the prophet Zechariah, in the 14th chapter, we read again about this living water. And it's kind of interesting, the context of it. It is the day of the end. It's the time of the end. It's the world to come, right? And so we read here in Zechariah 14, Behold, a day is coming for the Lord when the spoil taken from you will be divided among you. For I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to battle. And the city will be captured, and the houses plundered, the women ravished, and half the city exiled. But the rest of the people will not be cut off from the city. Then the Lord will go forth and fight against these nations, as when he fights in the day of battle. This is the final battle that the rabbis talk about, when the Messiah will come. In that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which is in front of Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives will be split in its middle from east to west, a very large valley, so that half the mountain will move toward the north and the other half toward the south. And you will flee by the valley of my mountains, for the valley of the mountains will reach to Azel. And it talks about, this geographic kind of change that will take place. Then we read that it will come about in that day that there will be no lights. The luminaries will dwindle, for it will be a unique day, which is known to the Lord, neither day nor light nor night. But it will come about that at evening time there will be light. And it will come about in that day that living waters will flow out of Jerusalem, half of them toward the eastern sea, the rest toward the western sea. It will be in summer as well as winter. In other words, an ongoing flowing of what's called living water, right? And then it says, the Lord will be king over all the earth. And then it goes on to say farther down that all the nations are going to come to Jerusalem and celebrate Sukkot. And so you have Sukkot now associated with these living waters. And with the end, with the world to come, very, very clearly. Now there's another passage. It's in Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 47. Now what's interesting about Ezekiel is is that his time was at the very end of the time of the prophets. He actually went into the captivity and wrote from Babylon. It's very very important to know that it's way after the times of the kings and so on and all that. Okay, all right. So in chapter 46, I'm sorry, chapter 47. Chapter 47. He says, now he has this vision of the temple, right? This vision of the temple, right? Now the temple had been destroyed, right? And so now God gives him this vision of the future. All is not lost, right? There's going to be this marvelous future in the gigantic temple that many believe is really, Jerusalem itself. And so he says this. He brought me back to the door of the house, and behold, water was flowing from under the threshold of the house toward the east. For the house faced east. And the water was flowing down from the right side of the house, south of the altar. And he brought me out by way of the north gate and led me around on the outside to the outer gate by way of the gate that faces east. And behold, water was trickling on the south side. Now, usually we stop there, but if we read a few more verses, it says something really very interesting. When the man went outside toward the east with a line in his hand, he measured 1,000 cubits, and he led me through the water, reaching the ankles. Again, he measured 1,000 and led me through the water, and the water reaching the knees. And it gets higher. It's like to my waist. It's to the waist, right? Then he says, he measured 1,000, and it was a river that I could not ford, for the water had risen enough water to swim in it. A river that could not be forded. In other words, it's coming out, and it starts little, and then there's more of it, and more of it, and more of it. And now, it's a large body of water that's coming out of Jerusalem. And he said to me, Son of man, have you seen this? Then he brought me back to the bank of the river. And when I had returned, behold, on the bank of the river there were many trees on one side and on the other. And he said to me, these waters go out toward the eastern region and go out into the Arabah, into the desert, and go toward the sea, being made to flow into the sea, and the waters of the sea became fresh. And it will come about that every living creature that swarms in every place where the river goes will live. And there will be very many fish, for these waters go there, and the others become fresh. So everything will live where the river goes. Okay? Everything will live where the river goes. I think I'll stop there. All right? So what's very interesting is this passage, and of course the passage in Zechariah, did not escape our ancestors. And on Sukkot, we all know, many of us know, there's many rituals associated with Sukkot. Rituals of, for example, pouring water, right? Going to the pool of Siloam and filling of pitchers of water and also with pitchers of wine, and then pouring them over the altar and so on and so forth, right? And we know that when you come to the end, they do it every day, and it like builds up. Almost kind of like, I hadn't thought about it, but it kind of like what it says here in chapter 47, that, it builds up. So on the last day of Sukkot, that is the big day of, it's called Hoshana Rabbah in Hebrew. To this day, Hoshana Rabbah, which basically means save very much. Okay? And so it's like the great day of praying for deliverance. And the theme is, the pouring of the water and praying for rain, because rain is necessary for life and so on. So our ancestors equated the praying for rain and the pouring, going to the pool of Siloam and bringing it back and pouring of the water to this event, especially in Ezekiel chapter 47. It's written about in a number of rabbinic passages. I have actually some of it written down, but I don't know. I'm not going to make okay, why not? So, for example, we have here that there's a lot of different rabbinic literature, a lot of it, and it has a lot of different names, and some of it has the name supplement. That's what Tosefta means, right? So you have like the Mishnah, which is the original document written around 200 CE or AD, right? Which describes how we're going to live without a temple. Then you have a supplement, and that's called Tosefta, right? And so in there, you have statements like this. Now, it's really long, so in other words, I'm not going to read the whole thing. But it says, why is the name the water gate, which is where they went to get the water, okay? It says, it is so called because through it they take the flask used for the libation at the feast. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says of it, the waters are dripping, intimating that water oozing out and rising, as if from this flask, will in future days come forth from under the threshold of the temple. That's what it says. And in the very same writing, later on it says, and in that day there shall be a fountain open to the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and from uncleanness. This is what the water does. That passage is in Zechariah chapter 13. In that whole section of the final battle and war and what and the deliverance in the coming of the Messiah. That's in the context where it says, they shall recognize him whom they have pierced, and they'll mourn for him as one mourns for an only son. And of course, that is speaking about Yeshua the Messiah. And these living waters come as a result of the final manifestation of Yeshua, all of it together. And this is part of Jewish understanding and teaching about Sukkot. That on Sukkot there's going to be these living waters will come forth. Why do I say all this? So that now we can turn to the 7th chapter of John and understand what's going on with Yeshua, that he's not pulling something out of the air. That he was speaking about something that would have been known in that day, but identifying himself as the Messiah. This is a very important point for us to understand, especially when we embrace the Messiah and how it is that we're able to keep moving forward and to keep going, right? So here in the 7th chapter, we know it was Sukkot, right? It says, now the feast of the Jews, the feast of booths, was at hand. It's Sukkot. If you jump all the way over to verse 37, now on the last day, the great day of the feast, Yeshua stood up and cried out, saying, if any man is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. He who believes in me, as the scripture said, from his innermost being shall flow rivers of living water. He's talking about those passages. He's talking about Ezekiel 47. He's talking about Zechariah chapter 14. And what he is saying when it says from his innermost being shall flow rivers of living water, he's saying that I am the one who is going to provide that, as it were, he says prophetically, really, that I am the temple. And first we could say, some people who study these things very carefully will say that, well, Yeshua is saying that he is, out of his innermost being shall flow rivers of living water, and that we're all the receivers. Other people that read it say, no, he's talking about those who are the Messiah followers, that out of all of us shall flow rivers of living water. Well, the honest answer is that from our point of view now, living now, it's kind of a moot point, because Yeshua is the temple. We read passages where the body of Messiah is the temple, the holy place, and not to say anything about a future temple or anything like that, but to say that in the promises that are made about where this living water comes from, it comes from the temple. And Yeshua is saying, I am he. I am the source. He's identifying himself as the Messiah, as the very presence of God, right? And they understood what he was saying, because in verse 40 it says, some of the multitude, therefore, when they heard these words, were saying, this certainly is the prophet. Others were saying, this is the Messiah. Why would they say this? Because they understood this thing about the living water. And they understood that anybody who's going to say that he is the one who provides the living water is the Messiah. And so they became up in arms over this statement, right? Now, John helps us out a little bit. It's really very interesting. In verse 39, he gives us a little bit of explanation about what Yeshua was referring to when he says living water. But this he spoke of the Spirit, whom those who believed in him were to receive. For the Spirit had not yet been given, because Yeshua was not yet glorified. Right? And we know that when Yeshua died for our sins, he took our sins upon himself like the Yom Kippur scapegoat, right? And he died, and then he rose from the dead, and he ascended to the heavenly, to the heavenly temple, to the heavenly sanctuary, and it is there where he began to fulfill his high priestly function, the Kohen Hagadol, of making atonement forever for the sins of mankind, and applicable to whoever embraces Yeshua. And so we have the forgiveness of sins, and as a result, the Ruach is poured out. And this is this promise that Yeshua gives to us. And it's interesting, again, I won't take the time to read it, but you have certain places in the literature that puts together this idea, not talking about Yeshua, but talking about the rain, the living water, and in passages where we read about the wells of salvation and the pouring out of the Ruach, the pouring out of the Spirit. It's not, what I have to say, when I say you have passages, in rabbinic literature, it's like one big argument, right? And so you have majority views, and you have minority views, and you have this view, but it's there. It's there. And that makes it very important for us, because Yeshua, being one of the Jewish leaders of his day, understood this and agreed with it, but applied it to himself. You see? So it wasn't like coming out of nowhere. It wasn't like, what's he talking about? No, he is saying, I am the one. You know, when you read about what you're looking forward to and about the living waters and the presence of God and the world to come, I'm the one. And that's what they didn't like. They understood what he was talking about, right? So it is, rather interesting to read a few of the passages that talk about this issue of this pouring out. So, for example, you read in, I believe, in Isaiah chapter 44, Yeah. And he says this in verse 3. Okay? I will pour out water on the thirsty land and streams on the dry ground. Someone ought to write a devotional book by that name. Oh, anyway. I will pour out my spirit on your offspring and my blessing on your descendants. Very important, the way these things are written. There's a lot of poetry here. I will pour out I will first pour out, like the water. I will pour out my spirit, and then it says, and my blessing. Blessing, infusion of life. Infusion of life, blessing with a variety of different meanings of whatever that blessing is. What we need to live and to thrive and to be satisfied. When we seek out God, He does give that to us. And Yeshua opens up the door for us by taking away our sins and whatever gets in the way, so that we can live that way now, even though we're in the wilderness. And even though we're in the desert, we can drink the living water now, which gives us all the motivation to keep going. Kadima, drink the living water. But that's not the only place, right? In Joel chapter 2, and this is what is quoted in the Brit Hadashah when the Spirit of God is poured out. This is really very interesting. This is what Peter recognizes. Like, this is what's happening, right? And so what do we read at the end of chapter 2? And I will come about after this, that I will pour out my spirit on all mankind. And your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions. And even on the male and female servants, I will pour out my spirit in those days. Make no mistake, when the pouring out of the Ruach is not like, it's not like God had what do you call those things where you're sucking out a little bit of water? Whatever that's called. What's that called? Like an eyedropper thing. A syringe or an eye drop thing. It's not like, okay, I'm going to squirt one on you because, you said the prayer. I'm going to squirt this on you. I'm going to squirt this on you. He poured it out. But the only way we can apply it, we can embrace it, is by embracing Yeshua. And so then, we receive the living water. And we become part of what God is doing. And we become empowered to keep moving forward in the wilderness. Notice it says, servants, slaves, men, women. The point of that is all over the place, right? And so very, very important that, this water, this living water is available to everybody, right? Okay? And so then finally, I could just go on and on, but I am. Okay. In the 39th chapter of Ezekiel, it says there in verse 29, and I will not hide my face from them any longer. Remember, we talked about the hidden face of God, right? I will not hide my face from them any longer, for I shall have poured out my spirit on the house of Israel, declares the Lord God. And so you read about, this is the promise, this pouring out of the Ruach. The pouring out of the Ruach is a sign of the end. And that is what Yeshua did for us. But he also says this to the woman at the well, doesn't he? About, the living water. Where can I find this water that's going to satisfy, right? And so Yeshua says, I will give you that water. I am the one who gives living water. We read about water in other places. Earlier here in Ezekiel chapter 36, where he says, he's talking about the new covenant. And he says, I'm going to bring you back to your own land, and I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean from all your filthiness and from all your idols. And moreover, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you, and I will put my spirit within you. May I suggest that the water of cleansing and God saying, I will give you my spirit, is not talking about two entirely different things. It's like one event. And that is why Yeshua says to somebody who should have understood this, Nicodemus, in the third chapter of John, unless you're born of water and the Spirit, you don't have life. He's not talking about getting immersed. He's talking about this. He's talking about this. That, and so it's available, it's available to all. And then finally, very interestingly, in a commentary, sort of a commentary, a rabbinic kind of discussion about Ruth. It's called Ruth Rabbah. It says, and it sort of ties Ruth, because it's agricultural, ties it actually into Sukkot, and says this: drink from what the young men have drawn. This is how the literature works. There's a statement. Drink from what the young men have drawn. So now that gets tied into, drinking from young men have drawn. Oh, you mean drawing the water at Sukkot and applying, right? This is, so that becomes understood as, this is the house of the drawing of water. Why is it called drawing? It is because they would draw the divine spirit from there. As it is stated, you shall draw water with joy from the wells of salvation. So clearly, this understanding of what Yeshua says in John chapter 7 clearly is stating in a Jewish way, I am the Moshiach. I am the Messiah of Israel. I have come that you might have life. I have come to usher in the beginning of the end. And that is exactly what he did. And so that on Sukkot, we are living, it's like we're living in the destiny, but we're still in the wilderness, right? And that gives us all the motivation to keep moving forward. Kadima, keep going. Don't stop. There's your destiny out there. Keep moving forward. And so today, if you're here and you're like living in a sukkah, maybe literally or figuratively, and wondering, what am I going to do? What you do is you keep pressing on, like we said last night. How do you do that? You do that by being filled with the living water, by being satisfied in Him. And God will empower you to be able to withstand whatever comes your way, to get there. And, we read in places in the scriptures, in the book of Ephesians, in the first chapter, that we are sealed with the ruach of promise. It's like we are sealed with the living water. And so we are going to get there. And, but here's the secret, okay? And then we'll pray. As human beings, we're not camels. We have to keep drinking water. Camels can drink, and then they're good for a season, right? They got those humps back there, right? They fill up with water and all that. So you know me, I'm out there running, right? Mile after mile. Wouldn't it be great, I think to myself often, if I could drink enough that I wouldn't have to think about it? I can go for a long time and have to keep drinking. Well, in the same way, when we drink the water, it is satisfying, but we have to keep drinking. We can't say, okay, I drank once, and that's good enough. No, we have to keep drinking the water. How do we keep drinking the water? By walking with God, by staying on His path. By staying on His path, there are water stops all over the place. Water stops galore. Right? We never have to get thirsty again when we stay on His path, no matter what the world may look like, right? Because we know that the outside is decaying, but inwardly, in Messiah Yeshua, we are always being renewed. And that is a great word about Sukkot, a great word of encouragement on this holiday. Keep going. Keep going, because the day is going to come when we will have a building from God, right? That will not deteriorate. There will be no more tears, no more sadness, no more crying. We will reach indeed the promised land. And as we come to the